Jane Parker shuffled the papers on her desk, her eyes stinging from staring at spreadsheets for hours. The office was dim, the rest of the staff having long gone home to their families. But not Jane. She was still there, running numbers, double-checking figures, making sure Sterling Investments hit the $10 million mark Victor Ellis had so desperately promised the board. Victor was the kind of man who could charm the boardroom with a single grin, but his warmth had grown colder towards Jane in recent months. The more the company grew, the more distant he became, as if Jane's worth had shrunk in direct proportion to the success she had helped to build. "Jane, you're still here?" Victor's voice echoed through the empty office. He stepped inside, his perfectly pressed suit and smug expression creating a dissonance in the room. Jane forced a tired smile, glancing up at him. "Just wrapping up. We hit $10 million, Victor," Jane said, her voice carrying the fatigue of endless hours and sacrificed weekends. Victor leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Yes, we did. Excellent work, Jane. Really excellent." But there was something unsettling in his gaze, a coldness that made her stomach knot. "You should get some rest," he added, his tone dripping with condescension. "Big day tomorrow." Jane watched him leave, his expensive cologne lingering like a dark cloud. She leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes. Clara's college tuition, the mortgage, the mounting credit card bills. She needed this job more than ever. But as she shut down her computer and gathered her things, Jane couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go very, very wrong. Jane pushed open the door to her small, cluttered apartment. The smell of microwaved macaroni hung heavy in the air. Clara sat slouched on the couch, eyes glued to her phone, barely glancing up as Jane dropped her bag by the door. "Hey," Jane said, forcing a smile. "Did you eat?" "Yeah," Clara muttered, her tone indifferent. Jane's chest tightened. Clara had grown more distant lately, and Jane couldn't shake the feeling that her long hours and constant exhaustion were driving a wedge between them. She sank onto the couch beside her daughter, but Clara stood abruptly, walking away. "Got homework," Clara said flatly, disappearing into her room. Jane stared after her, feeling the sting of rejection. Later that night, as Jane lay in bed, her mind drifted to Victor's strange expression earlier. The way his eyes had lingered on her, the patronizing tone in his voice. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The next morning, Jane entered the office to find Victor waiting in her cubicle. His jaw was tight, eyes sharp. "Jane," he said, voice clipped. "We need to talk." A knot formed in Jane's stomach. Victor stepped aside, revealing a stern-faced man in a dark suit, Robert Lang, the company's legal advisor. "What's going on?" Jane asked, glancing nervously between them. Victor's gaze was icy. "Robert has some concerns about discrepancies in the financial records. We're launching an internal audit." Jane's mouth went dry. "What? Discrepancies? I did everything by the book, Victor. You know that." Victor folded his arms, leaning against the desk. "Do I? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like someone's been cooking the books, and as the lead financial analyst, that falls squarely on you." Jane's heart pounded. "Victor, I swear, I haven't done anything wrong. You know how hard I work." "Save it," Victor snapped. "Until the audit is complete, you're suspended. Effective immediately." Jane felt the ground crumble beneath her. Suspended? Without warning? Her mind raced. The bills, Clara's tuition, the mortgage. Robert handed her a formal letter. "You have 20 minutes to clear out your desk." Victor's expression remained stony, a small, satisfied smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. Jane's eyes blurred with tears, but she bit down hard on her lip, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. As she packed her belongings, the whispers from her coworkers echoed like a death knell. Victor strutted by, his phone to his ear, laughing loudly. Jane's hands shook as she clutched her box of belongings. What had just happened? And why did Victor look like he'd been waiting for this moment all along? Jane sat hunched over the kitchen table, her eyes fixed on the letter of suspension, the words blurring together. The apartment was eerily quiet. Clara had gone to bed hours ago, barely saying a word to her. Her phone vibrated, startling her. It was a text from her best friend, Lila. "Lila, heard what happened. Are you okay? Call me." Jane's fingers trembled as she typed back, "Not now." She couldn't bear to talk, not yet. Not when everything she'd built was crumbling around her. Suddenly, a knock echoed through the apartment. Jane's heart leaped. Was it Victor? Or worse, the police? She forced herself to her feet, tightening her robe around her. Through the peephole, she saw Robert Lang standing in the hallway, his face shadowed. Jane hesitated before opening the door. "Robert? What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice hoarse. Robert stepped inside, his gaze darting around as if to make sure they were alone. "We need to talk." Jane closed the door, her stomach twisting. "About what? You already made it clear. Victor thinks I stole from the company." Robert sighed, rubbing a hand over his jaw. "Victor's lying. He set you up." Jane's knees went weak. "What? Why?" "I can't say much," Robert said, lowering his voice. "But Victor's been planning this for months. He's been siphoning money through a shell account, your account. He's been using your credentials to cover his tracks." Jane's blood ran cold. "You're telling me? He's framing me?" Robert nodded. "Yes, and if you don't fight back, he's going to pin everything on you." Jane clenched her fists, anger burning through her fear. "Why are you telling me this? You're his right-hand man." Robert's jaw tightened. "Because Victor's gone too far this time, and because he did the same thing to my sister years ago. She lost everything." Jane swallowed hard, her mind reeling. "What do I do?" Robert leaned closer. "We need to find proof. Emails, bank statements, anything that ties Victor to the shell account. But you need to be smart. Victor's watching you." Jane nodded, her heart pounding. "Okay, I'm in." As Robert slipped back into the hallway, Jane shut the door and locked it. She pressed her back against the wood, breathing heavily. Victor was framing her, and now she had to prove it, before he destroyed her life completely. The following morning, Jane sat hunched over her kitchen table, her laptop open, eyes bleary from hours of scouring old emails. Clara shuffled into the kitchen, her gaze fixed on her phone, barely acknowledging Jane's presence. "Morning," Jane said, her voice strained. "Yeah," Clara muttered, pouring a bowl of cereal. She kept her eyes down, her posture tense. Jane opened her mouth to say something, anything to bridge the widening gap, but her phone vibrated, cutting her off. It was Robert. "Jane," Robert's voice was hushed. "Are you alone?" Jane glanced at Clara, who was already retreating to her room. "Yeah, what's going on?" "I managed to get access to Victor's computer. There's a password-protected folder labeled Projects. I couldn't open it, but if there's anything connecting him to the shell account, it'll be in there." Jane's pulse quickened. "How do I get in?" "You still have your company laptop, right?" Robert asked. Jane swallowed, her eyes drifting to the laptop she had shoved under her bed the night she was suspended. "Yes." "Good. Use it to access the network remotely, but be careful. Victor's IT guy, Dennis, is a hawk. If he catches you snooping, Victor will know." Jane's jaw clenched. Understood. Later that night, after Clara had gone to bed, Jane pulled the laptop from under her bed, her hands shaking. She powered it up, her fingers hovering over the keys. The familiar Sterling Investments logo flashed across the screen, a reminder of everything she had lost. She navigated through the system, searching for the project's folder. It was there, buried beneath layers of generic folders, locked tight with a password. Her mind raced. What would Victor use as a password? She tried his son's birthday, his dog's name, the company's founding date. Nothing worked. Then a thought struck her. Victor was arrogant, narcissistic. What would a man like him use as a password? She typed in King Victor. The folder opened. Jane's breath caught in her throat. There were dozens of files, transaction records, wire transfers, emails with offshore banks. And then, at the bottom, a file labeled jp_financials.pdf. Jane clicked it open. It was a detailed report of transactions, all tied to the shell account under her name. Dates, amounts, even her signature, all forged. Victor had planned everything down to the last detail. Before she could download the files, her screen flickered. A chat window popped up. Dennis. "Jane, What are you doing? Jane's heart pounded. She slammed the laptop shut, her breathing ragged. Her phone vibrated again. It was Robert. What happened? He asked, urgency in his voice. I found it, Jane whispered. But Dennis knows. Victor knows. A pause. Get out of there, Robert said. Now. Jane paced the living room, her mind racing. The walls felt like they were closing in. Dennis had seen her. Victor knew. Any minute now, she expected the police to burst through her door. Her phone rang, the sound slicing through the silence. Robert. Jane, Robert said, voice urgent. You need to leave. Now. Leave? Go where? Jane's eyes darted to Clara's closed bedroom door. I can't just run. Victor's going to retaliate, Robert said, his words clipped. I just heard him on the phone with Dennis. He's claiming you stole company data. He's building a case against you as we speak. Jane swallowed hard, her mind spinning. What do I do? You need to go somewhere he can't find you. Lay low. I'll keep digging on my end, Robert said, his voice strained. Jane, he's not just trying to ruin you. He wants to bury you. The line went dead. Jane dropped the phone, her breath coming in ragged gasps. How had her life unraveled so quickly? A week ago, she was a respected financial analyst. Now, she was a fugitive in her own home. She moved to Clara's room and gently opened the door. Clara was asleep, headphones on, a faint light from her phone casting shadows across her face. Jane's chest tightened. Clara had already lost so much, her father, the stability of a two-parent home. And now, Jane was about to drag her into a nightmare. Jane hesitated, tears stinging her eyes. Was she being paranoid? Could she really leave everything behind on Robert's word alone? Before she could decide, there was a loud bang at the door. Jane's heart seized. The pounding grew louder, more insistent. Jane Parker, open up! Jane's blood ran cold. The police. Clara shot up in bed, eyes wide. Mom, what's going on? Jane rushed to her, grabbing her by the shoulders. Get dressed, now! But, now! Jane snapped, her voice cracking. Clara scrambled to her feet, fear etched across her face. Jane grabbed her purse, yanking open a drawer to retrieve a small stash of cash she had hidden away. The banging continued, louder now, each blow like a ticking clock. Jane Parker, we have a warrant! Jane's heart hammered as she shoved Clara toward the fire escape. Go! Go! They clambered out into the cold night, the metal stairs groaning beneath their weight. Below, she could hear the front door burst open, heavy boots pounding through the apartment. Jane tightened her grip on Clara's hand, forcing herself to keep moving. They had to get away. But where could they go? As they reached the bottom of the fire escape, Jane's phone vibrated again. A text from Robert. Robert, meet me at the old mill, alone. Jane swallowed, her grip on Clara tightening. Alone. Was this a trap? Could she trust Robert? But she had no choice. Victor was closing in, and if she didn't act fast, she would lose everything, including Clara. The old mill loomed against the night sky, its shadow stretching across the empty lot like a gaping maw. Jane's breath fogged in the frigid air as she crept toward the entrance, her heart pounding in her chest. The mill had been abandoned for years, its windows shattered, its walls scrawled with graffiti. Inside, the scent of damp and rot assaulted her. Broken glass crunched beneath her sneakers as she moved through the darkness, her eyes straining to adjust. "Robert?" she whispered, her voice echoing through the hollow space. A rustling sound echoed from the far end of the room. Jane's pulse quickened. Was it Robert or someone else? "Jane," a voice said, low and urgent. Robert stepped out from the shadows, his face drawn, his eyes darting nervously over her shoulder. Jane swallowed, fists clenched. "Where's Clara?" he asked. "She's safe," Jane said, her jaw tight. "What do you want, Robert? You said you had more proof." Robert glanced around, his expression tense. "Victor's building a case against you. He's claiming you stole proprietary data and leaked it to a competitor." Jane's eyes widened. "What? That's insane." Robert nodded grimly. He's got Dennis falsifying logs to make it look like you accessed sensitive files and emailed them to a dummy account. It's bad, Jane. Jane shook her head, a knot forming in her gut. Why is he doing this? What does he gain? Robert swallowed, his jaw working. Victor's been laundering money through the shell accounts for years. If the board finds out, he goes to prison, but if he pins it on you, he walks away clean. Jane's stomach churned. And what about you, Robert? Why are you really helping me? Robert hesitated, his gaze dropping to the floor. Because Victor's been paying me off for years. I knew about the shell accounts. I knew he was framing you. Jane's breath caught. You knew? Robert's eyes flashed with guilt. I'm sorry, Jane. I tried to stop it, but he threatened me. And my sister. She still hasn't recovered from what he did to her. I can't let him destroy another life. Jane's hands trembled as rage coursed through her veins. You let him frame me? You watched him destroy my life and said nothing? I can still help you, Robert said, his voice pleading. I can get the real files, the ones Dennis is using to frame you, but it's risky. Jane's eyes narrowed. How do I know you're not setting me up? Robert's jaw clenched. You don't, but if you don't trust me, Victor wins, and you'll go to prison for a crime you didn't commit. Jane stared at him, her heart hammering in her chest. Was Robert telling the truth? Or was he just another pawn in Victor's game? Before she could respond, headlights swept across the room. Jane and Robert turned, eyes wide. A car door slammed. Heavy footsteps echoed through the mill. Jane Parker! A voice boomed. It was Dennis. Jane's blood ran cold. They were trapped. Dennis's shadow loomed against the fractured wall of the mill, his footsteps echoing like a countdown. Jane's heart hammered in her chest as she pressed herself against the cold brick, Robert crouching beside her. You said he wouldn't follow you, Jane hissed, her eyes darting toward the entrance. I didn't know, Robert whispered, sweat beading on his brow. Victor must have sent him to shut me up. Dennis's voice rang through the mill, deep and taunting. Come on out, Jane. You know you can't hide forever. Jane's mind raced. The exit was blocked. The only way out was through Dennis. But how? Robert's hand clamped around her wrist. There's a back door, through the boiler room. If we get there, we can slip out before he finds us. And then what? You think he won't come after us? Jane's voice trembled. You said he has proof I leaked those files. Fake proof, Robert said, his eyes darkening. I can get the real ones, but we need to get out of here first. Dennis's footsteps grew louder, closer. Jane swallowed, forcing herself to stay calm. Robert, if you're lying to me... I'm not, he said, eyes flashing. You want to clear your name or not? Before Jane could respond, Dennis stepped into view, a flashlight slicing through the darkness. Jane held her breath, pressing herself deeper into the shadows. There's no point hiding, Jane, Dennis called out, his tone cold. Victor's got the cops looking for you. All I have to do is make one call, and they'll be here in 5 minutes. Robert's hand tightened around Jane's wrist. Now, he mouthed. They sprinted. Dennis's flashlight whipped around, the beam catching Jane's face. There! Dennis bellowed, charging after them. Jane's lungs burned as she followed Robert through the maze of debris and broken machinery. Dennis's footsteps thundered behind them, closer, closer. Keep going, Robert shouted, grabbing a rusted pipe and yanking it free. He turned, brandishing it as Dennis closed in. Jane reached the boiler room, her hands fumbling for the latch on the back door. It wouldn't budge. Come on, she muttered, her fingers slipping as panic seized her. Behind her, the sound of metal striking metal echoed through the room. Robert and Dennis were grappling, the pipe clanging against the floor. Run, Jane! Robert yelled, his voice strained. Get out of here! Jane forced the latch down, the door flying open with a screech. She turned back, catching sight of Dennis slamming Robert against the wall, fists flying. For a split second, Jane's heart clenched. Leave him? After all he'd done? Robert's eyes met hers, blood trickling from his lip. Go! Jane bit back a sob, turned, and ran into the night. Jane ran until her legs ached, her breaths coming in ragged gasps. The streets were deserted, the cold biting through her thin jacket. She had no idea where to go, no allies, no plan. Only the knowledge that Victor was tightening the noose, and Robert's bloodied face haunted her mind. She found herself outside a rundown motel, the neon sign flickering like a dying heartbeat. Jane fumbled in her pocket, pulling out the crumpled bills she had stuffed there earlier. Enough for a room. One night, maybe two. Inside, the receptionist didn't even look up, just slid a key across the counter. Jane took it without a word, her hands shaking. The room was musty, the mattress sagging, the curtains yellowed with age. Jane locked the door and leaned against it, sinking to the floor. She pulled out her phone. 20 missed calls, 3 voicemails, all from Clara. Jane's heart twisted. She hit play. "Mom, where are you? The police came to the apartment. They said you're in trouble. Mom, what's going on?" Beep. "Mom, please call me. I don't know what to do. Are you okay?" Beep. The final voicemail was just static. Then, Clara's muffled voice. "Mom, he's here. He said he's a friend of yours, Robert. He says he wants to help, but—" Jane's blood ran cold. Robert was with Clara. But was he protecting her or using her? A sharp knock at the door made Jane jump. She rose to her feet, every muscle tense. "Jane," a voice called through the door. It was Lila. Jane's breath caught. Lila, her best friend. Someone she could trust. Jane unbolted the door, yanking it open. Lila's eyes were wide, her hair disheveled. "Jane, what the hell is going on? The police are everywhere. They say you stole from Sterling, that you're on the run." Jane pulled Lila inside, locking the door behind them. "It's Victor. He's framing me. He's using Robert and Dennis to cover his tracks." Lila's eyes searched Jane's face, doubt flickering in her gaze. "Jane, are you sure? They have evidence. Emails from your account, bank transfers in your name." Jane shook her head, grabbing Lila's shoulders. "It's all fake. Victor planted it. He's been laundering money for years, and now he's making me the scapegoat." Lila swallowed, her eyes narrowing. "And Robert?" Jane's jaw clenched. "He's with Clara. He said he wants to help, but I don't know if I can trust him." Lila hesitated. "Jane, you have to get out of here. The police are looking for you. If they find you—" "Clara," Jane whispered, panic tightening her throat. "If Robert has Clara—" Lila grabbed Jane's arm. "Then you need to find them. Now!" Jane's pulse raced. She grabbed her bag, stuffing the cash and her phone inside. Where would he take her? Lila shook her head. "You know Robert better than I do." Jane closed her eyes, forcing herself to think. Robert's sister. The one Victor destroyed. Robert once said she was the only person he trusted. Jane's eyes snapped open. The cabin. Robert's family cabin in Edgewood. He took Clara there. "Then go," Lila said, pressing the car keys into Jane's hand. "But Jane, be careful." Jane nodded, her jaw set. She stepped into the night, her heart pounding with a single desperate thought. Get to Clara before Robert does. The road to Edgewood twisted through dense woods, the trees looming like dark sentinels. Jane gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. Rain pelted the windshield, each drop a ticking clock counting down the seconds. Clara's voicemails echoed in her mind. Robert was with Clara. But why? Was he protecting her or holding her hostage? Jane pressed her foot harder on the gas. The headlights cut through the storm, illuminating the outline of the cabin, a sagging, decrepit structure surrounded by trees. Jane's heart hammered as she parked the car and climbed out, her boots sinking into the mud. The cabin's windows were dark, the only sound the relentless patter of rain and the wind howling through the trees. Jane crept forward, her breath fogging in the cold air. Inside, a light flickered, a single wavering bulb casting long shadows. Jane pressed her back against the wall, inching closer. Voices drifted through the cracked window. "Robert," Clara said, her voice small and scared. "Where's my mom?" "She's coming," Robert replied, his tone flat. "She's coming to get you." Jane's blood ran cold. Something was wrong. Robert's voice was too calm, too detached. Taking a deep breath, Jane moved around to the back of the cabin. The back door was slightly ajar, swinging on rusted hinges. Inside, Clara was seated on a tattered couch, eyes wide and filled with tears. Robert stood over her, his back to the door, his hands trembling. Jane stepped inside, her footsteps silent on the warped wooden floor. "Clara," she whispered. Clara's eyes snapped to Jane, relief flooding her face. "Mom!" Robert spun around, his face pale and drawn. "Jane," he said, his voice cracking. "You shouldn't have come." Jane clenched her fists. "Where's Dennis? Is he coming?" Robert shook his head, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "He's gone. Victor called him back to the office. He thinks I've already dealt with you." Jane's eyes narrowed. "Dealt with me?" Robert swallowed, his eyes darting to Clara. "Jane, I tried to protect her, but Victor, he knows you're here. He's on his way." Jane's stomach dropped. "You called him?" Robert's face crumpled. "I had to. He said he'd kill my sister. He still has people watching her." Jane's breath came fast and shallow. "You used my daughter to lure me here. You lied." Robert's jaw clenched. "I didn't want to, but if I don't do what Victor says, my sister dies." "You think he's going to let you live after this?" Jane hissed. "You're a loose end." Robert's eyes darkened, and for a moment Jane saw the desperation in them. A man pushed to the brink, a man who had nothing left to lose. Suddenly, headlights cut through the trees. Jane's heart lurched. Victor was here. Robert's gaze snapped to the window, panic flashing in his eyes. "Jane, you have to go. Take Clara and run." Jane grabbed Clara's hand, yanking her to her feet. "Come on." But before they could reach the door, Victor's silhouette appeared in the doorway, his eyes cold and dead. "Well, well," Victor said, his lips curling into a cruel smile. "Looks like the family reunion started without me." Victor's shadow filled the doorway, his eyes gleaming with cold malice. Rain poured behind him, lightning splitting the night sky. Clara clung to Jane's side, her small fingers digging into Jane's arm. Victor stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The cabin felt smaller, the air heavier. Robert stood frozen, his gaze fixed on the floor, sweat dripping down his brow. "Well, Robert," Victor said, his voice calm and deadly. "I knew you were weak, but I didn't think you'd lead her right to me." Robert swallowed, his eyes flicking to Jane. "I did what you asked." Victor's eyes narrowed. "Did you? Because it looks like Jane and Clara are still breathing." Jane's jaw clenched. "You set me up, Victor. You stole that money, and you framed me for it." Victor's smile widened. "Framed you? Oh, Jane, I did more than that. I destroyed you. And all it took was a few signatures, a couple of forged emails, and one coward to do my dirty work." He shot a glance at Robert. Jane's fists clenched. "You ruined me. You ruined Clara's life. For what? Money?" Victor stepped closer, his eyes darkening. "Power, Jane. Money is just a tool. Power is what matters." Lightning flashed, illuminating the gun in Victor's hand. Clara gasped, pressing herself against Jane. "Victor," Robert said, his voice shaking. "You said you'd leave my sister alone if I did what you asked." Victor rolled his eyes. "Oh, Robert, you're as naive as ever. Your sister was never in danger. You were." Robert's eyes widened. "What?" Before anyone could move, Victor swung the gun toward Robert. Jane lunged forward, grabbing a rusted lamp from the table and hurling it at Victor. The lamp struck Victor's wrist, sending the gun skidding across the floor. "Run, Clara!" Jane screamed. Clara bolted for the back door, but Victor recovered quickly, grabbing Jane by the hair and yanking her back. Jane cried out, struggling against his iron grip. Robert scrambled for the gun, but Victor kicked him in the ribs, sending him sprawling. Jane clawed at Victor's hands, her nails digging into his skin. "You ruined everything!" Victor snarled, his breath hot against her ear. "I built that company, not you." "You stole it!" Jane spat back, raking her nails down his face. Victor roared, shoving Jane to the ground. The back door flew open, and Clara reappeared, holding a fire poker. With a scream, she swung it at Victor's head, the metal connecting with a sickening thud. Victor staggered, blood pouring down his face. Robert, gasping for air, reached for the gun. His fingers wrapped around the handle just as Victor lunged at Clara, his hands reaching for her throat. Jane's vision blurred with rage. She grabbed a shard of glass from the broken lamp and charged at Victor, plunging it into his side. Victor howled, clutching his bleeding wound, but his grip on Clara tightened. "Victor!" Robert's voice rang out, steady and cold. Victor turned, his face twisted in fury. Bang! The shot echoed through the cabin, the sound ricocheting off the walls. Victor's eyes widened in shock, his grip loosening. He crumpled to the floor, his eyes fixed on Robert, blood pooling beneath him. Robert lowered the gun, his hands shaking. Jane crawled to Clara, pulling her into her arms, sobbing. The sound of sirens grew louder, flashing lights illuminating the woods outside the cabin. Lila burst through the door, her eyes wide with horror as she took in the scene. Jane held Clara tight, rocking back and forth, her breath hitching as the police stormed inside. Robert dropped the gun, sinking to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry.